Have you ever felt like a joke in your own life story? Have you looked in the mirror and no longer recognized that happy, vibrant person you used to be, seeing instead a stranger with dull, empty eyes? That's exactly what happened to Mr. Toad. Yes, the same rich, reckless Toad who was the life of every party in the classic children's book we all grew up loving, The Wind in the Willows. But today, we're not talking about his grand adventures. We're talking about a different journey. A silent battle fought within the cold, lonely walls of Toad Hall, where our hero had completely given up.
Welcome back to Ink and Inside Podcast. The book we're exploring today is Counseling for Toads, a Psychological Adventure by Robert DeBord. Don't let the cartoon characters fool you. This isn't a fairy tale. This is a brilliant psychological journey that has sold over 1 million copies worldwide and is considered a roadmap to the complex landscape of the human mind. So, why should you spend the next several minutes listening to the story of a depressed toad? Because Mr. Toad's journey could very well be your journey, or mine, or anyone's who's ever felt lost. This video isn't just a book summary. It's going to take you inside a counseling session. It will help you recognize the wounded child, the judgmental parent, and awaken the adult that is hidden deep inside you. Stick with me through this entire journey, and who knows, you might just find the answer you've always been searching for.
The story begins on a gloomy day when Mole decides to visit his old friend. It had been a long time since anyone had seen Mr. Toad in his fancy clothes or flashy cars. Toad Hall, once his pride and joy, was now frighteningly silent. Mole found Toad not in his luxurious living room, but in the kitchen, huddled under a pile of old, dirty clothes. The Toad, who always smelled of fine perfume, now smelled a little off. His once lively, round eyes were now heavy with despair. And when he saw his dear friend, he burst into tears. His good friends, Mole, Rat, and Badger, were all deeply worried. They tried everything: coddling, encouragement, even scolding him and telling him to pull himself together. But it was all useless. The more they advised him, the deeper Toad sank into his sadness. Finally, Badger, the stern old friend, slammed his paw on the table and declared, "There is only one solution left, Toad, and that is for you to go into counseling."
The first counseling session was a disaster. Toad just sat there waiting for the therapist, a heron named Heron, to tell him what to do, just as he had always listened to others. But Heron remained silent. The tension was so thick that Toad couldn't take it and blurted out, "Aren't you going to tell me what I need to do?" And this is where the first shock hit. Heron asked a simple question that changed everything. "Who is my client then? You or your friends?" He explained that counseling is a voluntary process. It can only begin when Toad himself wants to change for his own sake, not to please his friends. Toad had to pay the bills and take responsibility for his own healing journey. For the first time in many days, an emotion other than sadness welled up in Toad: anger. But that very anger was the first spark. He realized he couldn't remain a passive child waiting for others to rescue him. He agreed to participate, not for his friends, but for himself. The real journey had begun. In the following sessions, Heron introduced Toad to a classic psychological theory, transactional analysis. He explained that inside each of us aren't just one, but three ego states coexisting. The child state. This is where all of our emotions and experiences from childhood are stored. When you feel extreme joy or primal anger, sadness or fear, that's your natural child speaking. But there is another version, the adapted child. This is the child who learned to adjust their behavior to cope with their parents. It learned to obey, to please, or to apologize, to avoid punishment and receive love. Toad realized that for most of his life, he had been living in the adapted child state. When Rat scolded him, he felt angry, but quickly promised to change to appease his friend. When Badger criticized him, he felt humiliated, but tried to cover it up with meaningless words. He was behaving like a child trying to please demanding parents.
The parent state is a recording of all the words, behaviors, rules, and values we learned from our parents. It also has two forms. The nurturing parent is the gentle, caring part, but the critical parent is the one that specializes in criticizing, commanding, and imposing rules. Toad was horrified to realize that Badger was a reflection of his own strict father, always criticizing and making him feel wrong. But even worse, Toad had swallowed his father's critical voice. He no longer needed anyone to criticize him because he had become his own harshest critic. No criticism is heavier than self-criticism. The adult state. And this is the key to freedom. The adult state is the rational, objective part that can analyze the current situation without being swayed by the emotions of the child or the prejudices of the parent. This is the only state where we can truly learn and create real change. Why do we keep repeating the same mistakes? Why did Toad keep getting into trouble, only to then feel sorry for himself? Hurry explained that it's because we are unconsciously playing psychological games. These are repetitive sequences of behavior with a hidden agenda. For example, Toad's favorite game was called Poor Me. He would unconsciously create messes so that when people criticized him, he could wallow in self-pity and reinforce the deep-seated belief that I'm not okay. This core belief is called a life position, which is formed when we are 4 or 5 years old. Toad had chosen the position, I'm not okay, you're okay. This meant he always felt inferior, while others were superior. And then he spent his whole life looking for evidence to confirm that belief, turning his life into a self-fulfilling prophecy. Meanwhile, Badger was in the position, I'm okay, you're not okay. He always needed to find fault in others, to criticize, to affirm his own superiority and righteousness. His game was, now I've got you, you son of a bitch, where he found opportunities to punish others and feel morally superior. And then, the defining moment came. Badger arrived at Toad Hall, not to visit, but to pressure Toad to resign from his position as a school trustee so that Badger could take his place. What would the old Mr. Toad have done? He would have either obediently complied or rebelled pointlessly. But this time, something different happened. Inside Toad, a fierce struggle erupted. He felt angry, but instead of letting the anger overwhelm him or repressing it, he let his adult speak. He didn't confront Badger directly because he knew it was an unwinnable battle. Instead, he wrote a letter, calmly and politely, refusing Badger's request and asserting his position. This was not the rebellion of a child. This was the independent action of an adult. In the final counseling session, Heron told Toad the most important thing. You have come to a crossroads. Which path will you choose? The path of blame, where you forever remain a victim of your past, of your parents, of your friends, or the path of responsibility. Nobody can make us feel anything. In the end, you are the one who decides and chooses what you will feel. Accepting responsibility for your own emotions is the greatest act of liberation. It means you have the power to change. And to do that, Toad had to do one last thing. Forgive. Forgive his parents, not because they deserved it, but because he deserved to be free from the burden of the past. Mr. Toad left Toad Hall, not because he was kicked out, but because he no longer needed those walls to hide his insecurities. He had found his true home, himself. The story of Mr. Toad is not about becoming perfect. It's about accepting that within us there is always a child who needs to be loved, a parent who needs to be understood, and an adult who needs to be empowered. The journey of healing is not about erasing the past, but about learning how to prevent the past from defining our future. It's a journey from dependence through rebellion to true independence. Author Robert DeBoard wants to convey that emotional intelligence, the ability to understand and master your own emotions, is the key to a fulfilling life. Like Mr. Toad, all of us stand at our own crossroads every day. Will we continue to play the same old psychological games, or will we bravely choose the path of the adult, take responsibility, and write a new story for our lives? The choice, in the end, is yours. If this story resonated with you, give the video a like to spread this meaningful message. And don't forget to hit subscribe to Ink and Insight podcast so we can continue to explore more journeys of self-discovery together. Thanks for listening. See you in the next video.